Hey guys, this is lesson 8.9, the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is our third and final way we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations. And the nice thing about this one is it will work with any equation as long as it's in our standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We still need to make sure it equals 0 before we do anything. So once we do that, we can identify our a, b, and c values, as long as a is not equal to 0, and then this is the formula we're going to use then to find our x values. Okay, so this will be something you are going to need to memorize for the test. We're going to learn in class a song to memorize it, so however you want to memorize it is fine, but just make sure you know it for the test. Okay, so on these first examples, we are going to use the quadratic formula. First of all, we need to make sure our equation is set equal to 0, which this one already is. And then we can go ahead and pull out our a, b, and c values. And then once we do that, we just plug it into the formula. So we're going to go x equals the opposite of b, so -5, plus and minus the square root of the whole quantity b squared, so 5 squared, minus 4 times a times c. And then all of that over 2 times a. Okay, so then the hardest part of this is just getting everything simplified. So I'm going to start with simplifying under my radical first. So I'm going to have the square root, 5 squared is 25, minus 6 times 4 times -4. That'll give me 24, and then 24 times -4 gives me -96. So I'm going to have minus a -96 all over 6 times 2 is 12. So if we go ahead and simplify that some more, -5 plus or minus the square root, 25 minus -96, that minus a negative, same as a plus. So that comes out to 121. All of that over 12. Now this one's kind of nice in that the square root of 121 is a nice even number at 11. So I'll have x equals -5 plus or minus 11 over 12. And then to go from there, I'm going to go -5 plus 11 divided by 12. And that'll get me a positive 1/2. And then if I go -5 minus 11 divided by 12, that'll get me a -4/3, and I'm just going to leave them as fractions. So don't forget you need to both plus and minus. So in that, that up there is how you get your 2 answers then. Okay, the majority of these will have 2 answers. Okay, let's try another one. Remember that we need to get it set equal to 0 first. So to do that, I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides. So I'm going to get 0 over here, and then over here I'll have a -x squared plus x plus 20. Now that it's equal to 0 on one side, now I can use my quadratic formula. If I pull out my a value of -1, b value is 1, and c value is 20. Okay, so from there then, I'm going to plug that into my formula. So I'm going to have x equals the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c. And all of that over 2a. Okay, and then I can start my process of simplifying. So I'm going to have x equals -1 plus or minus square root. 1 squared is 1, and then 4 times -1 times 20 gets me a -80. So I'm going to have 1 minus a -80 all over -2. Okay, and remember, just like last time then, that minus a negative turns into a plus. So I'm going to have -1 plus or minus square root of 81 over -2. And this one works out pretty well again too, because the square root of 81 is 9. So -1 plus or minus 9 over -2. Okay, and then I can go from there. So if I go -1 plus 9, I'll have 8. 8 divided by -2 is a -4. And my other answer then, -1 minus 9 divided by -2 will give me a +5. So there's my two answers there. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and try these next two on your own. Again, remember you need to make them equal to 0 before you do anything. Okay, now these next two are not going to give you such a nice square root. So it's the same process, though you just need to make sure that on this one you're going to round to the nearest hundredth for your final answer. And so they don't want it even simplified as a radical. They want you to go ahead and round to the nearest hundredth. So again, make sure it's equal to 0 first, which this one already is. Then I can get my A, B, and C values. And then I can plug into my formula. So I'll have x equals the opposite of b, so this would be a +2 then, plus or minus my square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and then all of that over 2 times a. Okay, so then I can begin my process of simplifying. So I'm going to have 2 plus or minus. -2 squared is 4, so 4 minus 4 times 1 times -4 is going to give me 2 plus or minus square root of give me plus or minus a square root of 20 over 2. Okay, so now the square root of 20, you are not going to get a nice number from. So then that's where the round to the nearest hundredth part comes into play. So when you go to plug that into your calculator, you'll type in 2 plus square root of 20 equals, and then you need to take that whole quantity divided by 2. And then once you do that, you'll round to the nearest hundredth. So you should get 3.24. And then if you go 2 minus the square root of 20, enter, and then divide by 2, and your other answer then should be a -1.24. Okay, make sure, go ahead and plug these into your own calculator and make sure you get the same answers. Make sure you're plugging everything in right. Okay, you'll have to press enter after that square root of 20 because otherwise your order of operations will be wrong. You need to do what's on the top first and then take that answer, divide by 2. Okay, try that second one like that on your own, and then we'll move on to our last part for today, which is talking about the discriminant. And so that is our vocab word here, and the discriminant just refers, there we go. Okay, the discriminant just refers to the b squared minus 4ac part, the part that's under the radical. And we can use that to determine if we're going to have 2, 1, or no real solutions. This goes back to our lesson on square roots, because if you have a square root of a negative number, you won't have any real solutions. And so that's what this little chart is talking about. If you can evaluate your discriminant and you get a positive number, then you're going to have 2 real solutions. If you evaluate your discriminant and you get 0, you're going to have just 1 solution, because that vertex is only going to hit my x-axis 1 time. And then if we end up with a negative discriminant, then we're not going to have any real solutions, because you can't take the square root of a negative number. Okay, so on these ones, oh, and then this little chart just kind of breaks it down for you a little bit more clearly. So on these ones, we're going to just focus on using the discriminant to find our number of solutions. So I'm going to use b squared minus 4ac. And then I'm going to just evaluate just that part. So again, I'm going to make sure my equation is set equal to 0 first. I'm going to identify my A, B, and C values. And then I'm just going to plug it into just the discriminant part. So I'm going to take -2 squared minus 4 times my A value times my C value. Okay, and if I go ahead and just plug all that into my calculator, I should get -20. And so since I got a negative answer, I can't take the square root of a negative answer if I were to plug that into my quadratic formula. So on this one, I would have no real solutions then. Okay, on this next one here, I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure my equation is set equal to 0. Identify my A, B, and C values, and then plug it into the discriminant. So I'm going to go b squared, 11 squared, minus 4 times A times C, plug all that into my calculator, and I should get 25. So since this is a positive number, then I would have 2 real solutions. Okay, and then the last one like this that we're going to do together. Again, identify my A, B, and C values. Plug it into my discriminant, so I'm going to go at b squared minus 4 times A times C. Plug all that into my calculator, and I should get 0, so that means on this one I'm going to just have 1 real solution. Okay, so based on what your discriminant is, you can determine how many outcomes you're going to have if you were to do the full quadratic equation. Okay, so go ahead and try these 3 on your own. Pause the video, and then we're going to go ahead and just do the equation, or the story problem, and then you'll be ready for your assignment. So on the story problem here, it says the height h in feet of an object shot straight up with initial velocity v in feet per second is given by this equation here. Okay, and c is representing our initial height of the object above the ground. The ringer on a carnival strength test is 2 feet off the ground and is shot upward with an initial velocity of 30 feet per second. And we want to know if it's going to reach a height of 20 feet. So we're going to take this equation here, and we are going to determine if it's ever going to reach 20 feet. So first of all, we need to identify what they're giving us. Okay, so first of all, it tells us that the ringer is 2 feet off the ground. So 2 is going to represent our C value, because they said that C is the initial height. Okay, our initial velocity is 30 feet per second, and they told us that that was given by V, so I'm going to have 30 equaling my V value. And then we want to know if it's ever going to reach 20 feet above the ground. So 20 is going to get plugged in for our height. Okay, so I'm going to plug all of those values into my equation now. Okay, and then once I've got that, I am ready to solve. So remember, I need to get it so it's equal to 0, just like on those other problems. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides so that I can have 0 over here. So I'll have negative 16t squared plus 30t, and then 2 minus 20 is a negative 18. So there's my equation now, and so now I'm ready to go ahead and solve since it's set equal to 0 now. So in order to solve, since I'm just going to find out if it's ever going to reach 20 feet, I don't need to know when. So you could find t if you really wanted to, but you could actually use just the discriminant like they said up here. So I'm going to just use the discriminant. Remember, that's b squared minus 4ac. And I'm just going to figure out if it ever will reach 20 feet. So if it comes out as a positive answer, then it will. If it's a negative answer, then it won't. So my A value, negative 16, B is 30, and C is negative 18. So I'm going to plug all that in. I'm going to go 30 squared minus 4 times A times C. And if you plug all that into your calculator, you come out to negative 252. So since my discriminant is negative, that means I am never going to have a real answer. So because my discriminant is negative, no, it's never going to reach a height of 20 feet. And that just, we just found that by, we got a negative under our discriminant, and so it's never going to reach that height. I would never be able to find a t value that would work because I can't take the square root of a negative number. Okay, you should be ready for your assignment now. Go ahead and get started, and good luck.